Monster Hunter Stories is the first true spin-off title to be localized internationally by Capcom in the Monster Hunter series, and I can tell you that it's certainly worth your time if you're an RPG fan with 3DS. I have 6 reasons here, in no particular order, why you should be excited to play Monster Hunter Stories. Typically, the story takes a backseat in Monster Hunter games, but in Stories, that's not quite the case. Stories has an entire world to understand, from the motivations of the riders to the distrust shown from the hunters. The frenzy, the ominous purple glow from 4 Ultimate, makes an appearance, and some of the monsters are humanized in a way that makes them relatable. There are several surprises that I really enjoyed during my playthrough, and even though there are some aspects that are a little more lighthearted, it's still a very enjoyable tale that gives the Monster Hunter world some credence as an RPG. Right at the get-go, I was constantly impressed with how relatable some of the monsters are. For example, very early on, you meet a baby Rathalos that your hunter bonds with. Your Rathalos is almost like a cat rubbing up against you and just generally being adorable. Shortly after, you'll meet a cat named Neviru, and this cat has a mysterious past that you'll discover as you continue through your journey. Following the arcs of your hunter, your monsters, Neviru, and other essential NPCs, it really had me eager to find out just what happens next at nearly every point. Rather than hunting monsters in real time, Stories opts for a turn-based battle system, similar to something like Dragon Quest or Pokemon even. You can pick between 3 standard attacks, sort of like rock, paper, scissors, or you could use a special attack that takes inspiration from attacks that monsters use in the mainline games. For example, the Zamtrios can use a move called Scatter Freeze, which is very similar to his Ice Beam attack, and Kuropeku can perform a variety of different attacks, most of which buff your party in some way, shape, or form. As you make successful attacks, you'll fill the bond gauge in the center of the bottom screen. When this is full, you can ride your monster and unleash a super attack that's always really fun to watch. Some of my favorite special attacks are from Rathalos, Zamtrios, Kezu, Tigrex. Hell, I love all of them. Some of them are really goofy too, like Aptonoth, who just runs over towards the opponent and slips on banana peel. The best one though, by far, is Brachydios. Check it out. Some people love to compare Monster Hunter Stories to Pokemon because you catch or hatch monsters from eggs more accurately. You can have a handful of monsters with you at any time and switch them out of battle just like Pokemon. However, I feel like the monsters in Stories are just so much more satisfying to use because the monsters are large and intimidating in relation to the context of the story. The first time I saw a Raytheon, I was so scared because I was inside of this nest trying to find an egg, and I was terribly unprepared to fight. I also feel like the monsters in Stories are significantly easier to grow and satisfying to use because it's just so much harder to go out and hatch a monster than it is to just wander into a patch of grass and catch something with a Pokeball. This makes each monster that you raise, even if they're something that's typically considered trash, like a Velocidrome, feel practical in certain situations. And not only that, but you can modify each monster with genes, such as increasing their attack power or giving them new attacks. You can also recycle duplicate monsters to buff other monsters. For example, this Lagombi knows a fire attack that helps to broaden its usefulness. I did this with a bunch of monsters, like I taught my Rathalos moves from a Kuropeku, and I gave my Tigrex a fire attack. While you have your monsters to help you in battle, your character also plays a critical role and helps out with subduing your enemies. As you kill more and more monsters, you can craft equipment just like in the mainline games. These are often very expensive, but well worth it, as you need to have a fine balance between attack, defense, and skills if you want to get through this game. Seeing the Zamtrios armor modeled in a new light really brings out some of the finer details, and I love how everything looks. There's also a huge amount of side quests that will grant you new skills and abilities, such as crafting certain items and armors. The way Capcom took all these familiar elements and adapted them to a completely different genre really makes this feel like an established Monster Hunter game. There are 4 types of weapons in Stories. There are Sword and Shield, Great Sword, Hammer, and Hunting Horn. Each one of these weapon types has a few perks. For example, the Greatsword has high damage and less affinity, whereas the Sword and Shield has less attack, but it gives you a skill that lets you guard, a very important skill for blocking charge-up attacks like Agnaktor's Burrow ability. The DLC in Monster Hunter Stories is free, much like the mainline games, and there is a ton of it, ranging from the awesome new quests where you fight new monsters like Molten Tigrex and Fatalis, down to the simpler things like modifying your hunter card with custom backgrounds. The DLC adds more than a few hours of game time, which is exactly how I think DLC should work. There's also an online component to the game as well, where you can pit your monsters against other players. By doing this, you also get egg pieces, which you can then use to hatch even more monsters. This is actually how you can get some exclusive monsters, so it's definitely worth doing if you get a chance to play Monster Hunter Stories. Perhaps the one thing that we should all take note of is that fans were really clamoring for this game to be released internationally, and Capcom obliged even though the game didn't sell extraordinarily well in Japan. Capcom is listening to us, even if it's just one ear. They heard our pleas for Monster Hunter Stories, and now they are testing the waters, so to speak. This really means that Monster Hunter is taking off and is becoming a more sustainable series for them. Perhaps we'll see more Monster Hunter titles or spin-off games in the future. It is an exciting time to be a Monster Hunter fan, that's for sure. So there you have it. There are 6 reasons to be excited for Monster Hunter Stories. I hope you enjoyed this little list, and I hope that helped invigorate your hype levels for this little fan service title. I was really skeptical about this game being an RPG at first, but I can assure you from personal experience that this game is a lot of fun. I actually played through the entire story here on my channel, so if you click on screen for the playlist, you can watch me take that adventure. There's also an anime about this game, Monster Hunter Stories Ride On, that happens alongside the game that I got a chance to look into. That's also a decent watch. But thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you later. Peace.